Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Royals Rundown podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jacob Milham, joined per usual by the illustrious Jeremy Greco. Jeremy, we're recording today on a Monday, and I am so happy that we delayed this podcast one day.
Seriously.
How we feeling, man?
You know, I am feeling a little worn out. Everyone always goes, "Oh, the winter meetings," and I'm like, does anything really happen at the? Okay, things are happening at the winter meetings.
Bang! We started off with a bang, but of course, if you're listening to this podcast, I sure as hell hope you've heard about what we are alluding to. But before we get into that, make sure you go check out royalsreview.com. Even if it's not specifically Royals related, that's fine. We got a lot of baseball news up there.
Kicked the tires on him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. They were one of the teams in the mix for Juan Soto services.
Matthew Lamar, I don't know if you saw this article he wrote today, had a really interesting point, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So he was projecting, and this is what Lesky's also been projecting, that the Royals are going to spend about $140 million this year, maybe.
Yeah.
And so he's saying that the Royals are at about 105 right now. If they don't make any more changes, which I've seen other places say closer to 115, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
105. So Soto ended up getting $51 million a year. That's how the annual average value breaks down. Royals had 35, 40-ish. If the bidding had not gone completely cuckoo bananas,
yeah,
you could see where the Royals thought, well, maybe.
Possibly.
We can call if it's in the 40 million range, we'll bid.
And well, it got well above that now, didn't it, Jeremy?
Yeah, it did.
Well, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So if you are unaware for some reason, the New York Mets, they knocked over the big domino this offseason. Like this was what everyone has been waiting for all winter so far. They signed slugger Juan Soto to a massive 15-year, $765 million contract, the largest contract in professional sports history. I had people wondering, like, well, why the heck are they paying him for 15 years? He's 26 years old. Yeah. Okay, he is just now hitting his athletic prime, according to science, which is crazy to think about. I mean,
the Yankees were trying to pay him for 16, allegedly. Somebody else, I cannot remember who the other team was, maybe the Red Sox.
I think it was the Red Sox.
Bid for 15 years, 700 some odd million. Neither team matched the Mets bid, but like everybody was like, yeah, it's going to take more than 700 and it's going to take 15 years.
And here we are sitting talking about it. If y'all remember earlier on this offseason, Jeremy and I spoke about the Scrooge Index with, how John Sherman was actually looking pretty favorable in that. If you go and you look back at that same index, Mets owner, Steve Cohen, I think is his first name. He was the only owner, I think, that had a higher payroll than their revenue.
Correct.
Like this guy has deep pockets. Yeah, this guy has deep pockets.
He came into it with a lot of money, even for a baseball owner, and he came into it as an actual Mets fan, not just, I kind of like baseball, and this might be an opportunity to make some money. He's like, no, I'm a Mets fan, and I want the Mets to win. He came into it like you or I would go into owning a sports team if we had sports team owning money.
Hey, that would be nice. I'd certainly make some changes with the Royals. I mean, just look at the opening day payroll. Like their payroll projected for 2025, $235 million. And that's a massive decrease from their $328 million opening day payroll from 2024. It is,
so probably not done either.
No, probably not. And even they've made a flurry of moves. Jeremy, I don't want to get too far away from Juan Soto here because, of course, he is a superstar. There's no doubt about it. He was behind Bobby Witt Jr. in the MVP voting, and if we're calling Bobby a superstar, then we got to call Juan Soto a superstar, in my opinion. Like, how are you feeling about this sign?
Ambivalent, I guess. Yeah. Like, this is how it goes. Everyone kind of went, he's probably gonna get $700 million. The Fangraphs free agent tracker, which I just somehow discovered today, they projected him. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Projected him 13 years, 585 million, and that was obviously low, but like that was he was gonna get signed for more than a decade. He was gonna get an insane amount of money. I think the only reason it was that low was because Shohei Ohtani just signed last offseason for 700, and they're like, well, he's not gonna get Ohtani money.
Yeah.
But I believe he's actually younger than Ohtani. Let me check Ohtani's age.
Yes, he is younger than Ohtani.
So yeah, I mean that makes a difference. Shohei does have some injury history stuff that makes a difference. Shohei's wasn't that 10 years for 700 million?
Yes. Yeah.
So annual average value for Shohei is way high.
Yep. That it is. Overall value
And then you've got all the shenanigans with the deferred money that reduces the value of that money because money will be less valuable in 10 years than it is now. But as Matthew Lamar was talking about a couple weeks ago, I think it was now, or maybe last week, the whole income tax thing that happens when you're not still living in the same state. So I don't know what the true value of that is, but yeah, Shohei is not hurting for money either.
No,
not worried for him.
And this deal just further cements Bobby Witt Jr.'s deal as a steal right now. I mean, you get Bobby Witt Jr. for 11 years, $288 million. I mean,
and I would argue Bobby's got that opt out. So like, oh, does that? But Juan's got the opt out after 5.
Yep, exactly.
So the Mets can void the opt out by giving him a $4 million raise each per year for the remaining 10 years of the contract.
Yeah,
it's like you're already paying him 500 some odd million. Just tack 40 million on there, and you get to keep him,
and you lock him up. That is just fine.
Sure, go for it.
So I am looking forward to seeing where the Royals fall once we finally get all of these payroll projections out of the way. If you want to go and read Matthew Lamar's article on how high can the Royals payroll go, he lays it out very, very clearly, very concisely. So go check that out. Look at the history, see what the Royals could and should do, I would say. I do want to point out though, Jeremy, one thing that I do find interesting is usually when you crowdsource contract predictions, usually they're like maybe a little over, but
sometimes
I
haven't super paid attention. I was looking just to see like how accurate the Fangraphs predictions were. I was looking at last year and so far this offseason, and I didn't check. I didn't stop to think, are they more over or are they more under? But what I noticed was just that they're pretty close.
They are pretty close, but they're also consistent. The projections are also consistently under what the players are getting. Yeah, this offseason so far, except for the Royals signing Michael Wacha.
Yes.
Which is very, very interesting. Just goes to show a little bit more value of the front office. And I hope, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a lot of that comes down to Michael Wacha. Take 54 million now or 51 million, whatever it was. Take 51 million now or spend the whole offseason trying to get a couple $1 million more. If I'm Michael Wacha, I'm like, yeah, let me just get that done. Let me just move on with my life and know that I'm good here. My family's happy here, and I got enough money. Thank you.
That he does. That he does. So hey, let's go ahead and look at, this kicked off the winter meetings. Like a lot of people were talking about flying into Dallas yesterday, getting settled in hotels and things like that. And this news broke later at night. I think it broke at like
it was in the middle of the Chiefs game.
Yeah,
it was sometime pretty late at night.
That it was. So the winter meetings still need to be the overall headline of this week. Rule 5 draft coming up, draft lottery, and just everyone getting together is always one of the big pivotal events of the offseason. And we heard from manager Matt Quatraro today through Andy Rogers, which was interesting, giving a little bit more guidance to what the Royals could do. Mrs. Rogers tweeted out, at the winter meetings, Matt Quatraro says he'd like the Royals to keep adding depth this offseason, specifically mentioning, quote, someone who can play infield and outfield, end quote. Quote, just creating some depth and being open to any opportunities that come, especially on the offensive side, end quote. Jeremy, should we be reading it too much into that, or is that seems like a pretty sensible approach to me? Like, I think they have to replace Garrett Hampson and Adam Frazier's opportunities. Go ahead.
Here's your headline, Jacob. Baseball manager says baseball teams should sign players.
Gasp! I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah,
Goodness.
That's what I get out of that statement.
Yeah. Listen, we're starving for stuff here, man. The Royals.
Well, I mean, we're starving as the Royals. The rest of the league. I mean, it wasn't just Juan Soto yesterday, Jacob.
No, it was not. Who else did we have? I was telling
you, Michael Conforto signed with the Dodgers, 1 year, 17. You posted on Blue Sky that you thought I wouldn't pay that much for Conforto, and my response was, "It's 1 year, Jacob."
Yeah.
That was the funny thing for me is I saw Conforto signed with the Dodgers and I said, oh, okay, Juan Soto's about to sign and it is not with Los Angeles. So I nailed that one. I should have tweeted it or posted it, I guess. I'm not on Twitter anymore. But gosh, we saw the Mets also went out and grabbed Clay Holmes, who we have talked about before as a guy that we thought might fit in the Royals bullpen. Jordan Romano signed with the Phillies today. He was a guy that some people have talked about maybe fitting with the Royals.
Tyler O'Neill was another big one. Yeah, going to Baltimore.
Has a bunch of signings yesterday.
Yeah, there was.
So it'll be. There's still free agents out there, though. Again, I was looking at that free agent tracker, and I was like, man, I understand why the Royals think they might want to trade for that big bat, because outfield bats. I mean, you've got basically Profar, Santander, and Teoscar Hernandez.
Right
now, and this is where things are. I'm really interested to kind of see what happens next. Because last offseason, the Royals kind of jumped the line. They did a whole bunch of signings before everybody else and felt like they got pretty good deals because of that.
Yeah.
And this offseason, they obviously have not jumped the line. Everybody else is making moves. So I'm wondering if they realized that this offseason was going to be a little bit hotter and heavier than last offseason. And so they're going to wait and see who's left when the dust clears and what they can make happen. Oh, Shane Bieber was another guy. He re-signed with the Guardians that some people had liked, I had liked. But there's still guys out there. Like I said, those 3 outfielders are still out there. Jack Peterson's still out there. If you think a DH might work. And you could kind of platoon him and Freddie Fermin a little bit with lefties and righties. So there's still options out there, but there's also no rush. Because if Santander gets signed, you still got Teoscar and Jurickson. Right? Yeah. And maybe you find someone else that you like out there. And of course, there's opportunities in trades too. So
yeah,
I'm crossing my fingers right now that the Royals are just kind of saying, all right, let's wait and see how things kind of fall out and see if we can get deals on the late end of this offseason, because the deals are not there early this offseason.
No. I mean, these guys that are signing right now are setting the free agent market for the rest of the league. And I mean, Tyler O'Neill was really outside of Juan Soto, of course, he was really the first big outfield domino.
Willie Adames got signed too. He was
my gosh, yeah,
not as an outfielder, but.
Well, he's a very he's a top flight shortstop. You know, he's not a Juan Soto level, but
I gotta say I would not have wanted the Royals to do the Willie Adames or Tyler O'Neill deals. Willie Adames is getting paid a lot of money for a long time.
Yes,
$182 million for 7 years.
Yes,
and his batting metrics don't make me confident he's going to live up to that. And then the big thing about the Tyler O'Neill, 3 for $50 million, basically, that's not bad, but he gets an opt-out after the first year. So if he's good this year, that's it. You got to find another outfielder next offseason. If he's bad, you're paying him a lot of money for 2 years.
The Chicago Cubs are kind of in a similar situation with Cody Bellinger right now. So it is. I was curious about what your hesitancy was with the O'Neill deal, but that absolutely makes sense. I mean, and he is a very volatile player. There's a reason why he was in Boston.
It's Hunter Renfroe, so much more dangerous. Hunter Renfroe, I said I don't like this signing. He's a bounce back guy, and if he doesn't bounce back, you have to pay him in 2025. Well, he didn't quite bounce back. He did have a couple really good months that make me go, maybe it's not the end of the world that they have him on the roster. But also, he wasn't there. He's probably not going to get all the way back this year. It could happen, so it's not a foregone conclusion, but I'm not betting on it.
No.
So and Tyler O'Neill, he's always hit well, but he does have also a really bad injury history.
Yes.
So it's like, even if he's good in Baltimore, he could be hurt, and then you got to pay him for 3 years of being hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that necessarily.
No, that doesn't sound like a wise investment at all. I mean, if you go in, the Steamer projections have been out. Our friend of the podcast, Dave Zamborski, is starting to put out the Zips projections that we do prefer, I will say. But Steamer is still a solid system overall. And for Hunter Renfroe right now, they're projecting him in a platoon role out there in right field. 104 WRC plus, overall a 0.6 FWAR guy. Like, he's not the player that you want him to be, but at least he's not a complete black hole, right? So I do hope that they prioritize the outfield this offseason. That has not changed at all.
One thing that's got me really worried, Jacob, did you see the Ken Rosenthal notes that had the Royals in it a few days ago?
Yeah.
Let me just quote this. The Kansas City Royals expect their payroll to be in the same $120 million range it was last season, according to sources briefed on their plans. Fangraphs estimates the team's current payroll is $116 million, leaving little flexibility for the front office to acquire the additional hitter it is seeking. The Royals' preference is for a left-handed hitter. Why? That was the why was me.
Yes.
Jurickson Profar, a switch hitter, likely will be out of their price range. A more likely target is Josh Rojas, who was non-tendered by the Seattle Mariners. The return of free agent Adam Frazier is a possibility as well, and a trade for Mets third baseman Brett Beatty also would make sense. And I'm like, none of those guys, with the possible exception of Profar, and I'm not guaranteeing it by any means, is a lineup lengthener.
No.
If that is that's the best of what the Royals are looking at, then we're in trouble. Hopefully, and again, David Lesky and Matthew Lamar have both said that they think the Royals will be closer to 140 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they're going to be closer to 140 million, they got plenty of money to add to this roster still.
Yeah.
At least 25 million, right? That'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of, I think Matthew Lamar talked about this when he was on too. They have a lot of roster flexibility going forward because most of these guys aren't under contract past 2026. So there's a lot going on. It's a little scary right now to be like reading Ken Rosenthal's projections about who they could target and how much money they have. But the offseason is not over yet. The Royals did us right last year. Gonna try and be patient.
Yeah, I'm definitely being patient, and frankly, if I had to pick a side, I would pick Lesky, and you said it was Matt who broke that, right?
Yeah, Matthew Lamar was what he was writing earlier today when it was the thing about Juan Soto and how much money they might spend.
I mean, you have to wonder how, locking up the broadcast deal, if that's changed things. The payroll overall is trending up. I know it's still not, it might be middle of the road as far as their MLB peers, but that's fine. That's a massive improvement.
Even 140 million would still be in the bottom half of MLB.
Yeah, it's just how baseball is right now.
And that's where I'm like, people, this is when I come back, everyone's always, oh, they can't afford this. They can't. Yes, they actually can. They choose not to. Juan Soto, they could have afforded Juan Soto. They could have paid him $51 million a year, and they would still make a profit. They don't want to. That's fine. I understand not wanting to lock in that much money on Juan Soto given their payroll. Mm-hmm. I do get that. Like, that does make sense. But also, they could have done it if they wanted to.
Yep.
So don't tell me we can't afford Teoscar Hernandez, because you can.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to sign him for 15 years. You could pay him $20 million for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's bad, well, yeah, that's a lot of money. That's a high percentage of your payroll that isn't helping you.
Right.
But, you got to try. If you don't try, this is the thing that MLB teams do that ticks me off, is they're so scared of making a bad deal that they make no deal.
Yes.
And I'm just like, you got to take some risks, y'all. Where's that you got to spend money to make money attitude?
I mean, hey, I know the Yankees are in a completely different stratosphere as far as their brand. But I mean, you go and look at some of the deals that they've made in the past couple of decades. Like they have a lot of like what we would consider franchise worst deals. They they do, but they keep trucking and they keep trying, and it almost paid off for them this year. Not quite, almost paid off.
I just want to see teams try to win. Royals tried to win last year. They didn't spend an insane amount of money. They went out and got 2 starting pitchers for $15 million a year, which is very reasonable for the starting pitching market.
Yes.
They went out and added some relievers for a few million. They added a bat for a few million. Now, not every move they made worked out, but enough of the moves they made worked out that they went to the playoffs.
Yes.
And I'm just like, see, you can get to the playoffs on a moderate, like, just make some gambles. I mean, Seth Lugo was a gamble. Michael Wacha was a gamble. Or at least from the outside looking in, they were gambles. Maybe the Royals knew something that proved to them that they weren't. But like, these are not guaranteed, like, this will definitely work deals. Juan Soto is definitely going to be good for 5 years. I just got to tell you, he's going to definitely be good for 5 years.
Yes.
But you can go out. You don't have to spend $50 million to get Juan Soto so that you can compete with the Mets. Go out and spend $20 million, get Teoscar Hernandez, and say, all right, well, he's not Juan Soto, but he does make our team much better. And once you get in the playoffs, who knows what happens? Aaron Judge is the best hitter on the planet till he gets to the playoffs. And then he's not very good at all. Things change in the playoffs. Chiefs fans, Kansas City Chiefs fans should know this. So just come on, let's see what happens. Go out and try.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, we're going to keep it moving here, but before we do, please make sure that you go check out royalsreview.com. You can also follow Royals Review on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Blue Sky at Royals Review. A lot of great content there, a lot of a pretty good community. I thought it was nice to see a fan post up on the front page today. I always enjoy reading those, hearing from new voices, so thank you to whoever wrote that. I
think that
appreciated
was Cobra
it.
writing the addendum to Matthew's the
Shopping
holiday gift guide.
Yeah.
Always a fun time, both of those articles.
For sure. There's some wild sports related gifts out there. It's like, why are we putting a logo on this again? But hey, it's still a fan post. We still care about the Kansas City Royals here in early December. Yeah.
There's a section that's gonna stick in my head for a long time where he's talking about they have one of those, like, you try to flip the ring on the hook drinking game things.
Yes.
I don't know what that's called, but they have a Royals branded one of those.
Nice.
That Cobra Sai wrote about, and he wrote a little story about a former coworker who he mixed old fashions for and accidentally made doubles, and the guy didn't drink much. Shenanigans ensued.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was a fun story. Like, it's good quality writing.
Hell yeah. Another good quality story that we got to read this weekend is we have some new folks in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Jeremy.
Yeah.
It's a good time. Dick Allen and Dave Parker elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Players.
Very, very deserving. But I think you're a little bit more hung up on who didn't make the Hall of Fame, Jeremy.
I had 2 guys that were my kind of, I want these guys in. I'm not super familiar with Dick Allen and the other guy's name who I keep forgetting.
Parker.
Richard Parker.
Dave Parker.
Richard Parker. Dave Parker, all the Parkers, get all the Parker brothers in there. Yeah, so it's, I'm not as familiar with that is not my era. Obviously, these other guys, the Veterans Committee, none of these guys are my era of baseball, but there's a couple guys that I know pretty well that did not get sufficient votes. One of them got fewer than 5 votes out of the committee, and that would be Tommy John, whose name everyone who knows baseball is familiar with.
Yeah.
And John Donaldson.
Yeah, so tell me about John Donaldson.
John Donaldson was a big deal Negro Leagues player.
Okay.
Which is considered a major league now.
Correct.
But also, his contributions aren't necessarily statistical in nature, because even in the major leagues of the Negro Leagues, he didn't play a ton. But he kind of set the benchmark for what it would look like for black players to barnstorm and to make money as barnstorming baseball players. He also invented slash popularized the slider, which is a pretty damn important pitch in baseball, especially for the Royals, as some of you know. Like, so he doesn't necessarily have statistical contributions, but he has huge contributions to the sport. Tommy
Yes.
John does have he has a pretty good career. If you go back and look at his numbers, pretty good career. But also huge contribution to the sport in getting the surgery that's named after him
Mm-hmm.
and coming back and pitching. So for me, the Hall of Fame is not just about raw statistics. I've never looked at the Hall of Fame and said that's raw statistics. The Hall of Fame to me is first and foremost a museum of the history of baseball. So when you've got guys who have contributed to the sport as much as those two, I'm not overly concerned with what their statistics are because they have contributed a Hall of Fame level contribution to the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I come from with those guys, and I'm kind of ticked off that they're not in.
Hey, I'm sure we might hear more about it on Saturday, huh? You might have a little paragraph in there, or Saturday, excuse me.
Saturday, I was actually planning to write about a different Hall of Fame.
Well, yes, we should definitely talk about that Hall of Fame right now. The Royals Hall of Fame class of 2025 is now open.
Big voting class for the Royals this year.
Huge voting class. A lot. Like, I had a tough time voting for this one. There was a couple of guys I was like, man, just
what's the max you can vote for? I forget.
Five. In this class of 9. So
I think I could give you 5 off the top of my head.
Okay, well,
let's look at this list again.
Yeah. So while you're looking at the list again, what it is, if you go to Royals.com and if you go to Royals Hall of Fame, they have voting open for, of course, the Royals Hall of Fame. The 2025 ballot includes 5 first-time eligible Royals alumni and 4 that return after receiving at least 10% of the vote last year. You get, I'm just double checking here that you get to vote for 5. That's your max. So, Jeremy, who are you voting for?
So, the 9 candidates are Carlos Beltran, Billy Butler, Johnny Damon, Wade Davis, Gerard Dyson, Alex Gordon, Kelvin Herrera, Joaquim Soria, and Yordano Ventura. So, I'm definitely voting for Kelvin Herrera, Wade Davis, Gerard Dyson, and Alex Gordon.
Yeah.
They were part of that championship squad.
Absolutely.
Alex Gordon is one of the best Royals to ever don the uniform. Wade Davis had one of the most dominant relief 3-year runs ever. Mm-hmm. Gerard Dyson, again, doesn't have this is the same thing with the Royals Hall of Fame. He doesn't necessarily have the statistics for the Royals Hall of Fame, but you can't tell the story of the 2014 and 15 Royals without him.
No, you can't.
And of course, Kelvin Herrera, he doesn't have the saves that Davis has.
But his impact.
You had to get through the 7th inning to get to Wade Davis and to Greg Holland, and Kelvin Herrera made that.
HDH.
Damon is the only guy that I'm not voting for him. If there were 5 guys on the ballot, I would vote for Damon. I'm not mad if he gets in by any stretch of the imagination, but he is not nearly on the same level as the other 4 guys to me. And so I'm really, Beltran probably should be the guy based on statistics, but whatever. I'm not like he to me, he's not a Royal Hall of Famer. He's a baseball Hall of Famer, but as good as he was with the Royals, fine. I feel like you can tell the story of the Royals without Carlos Beltran, unless you're talking about the awful contract shenanigans that David Glass pulled.
Yeah.
So that leaves kind of Billy Butler, Joaquim Soria, and Yordano Ventura. I know Yordano Ventura kind of gets the sympathy vote for his early death, which is very unfortunate. Joaquim Soria was really freaking good.
Yeah.
Another guy that you could probably kind of tell the story of the Royals without him, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I've convinced myself to vote for Butler here, Billy Butler.
Really?
Yeah.
You really backed into that one?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would go Butler. Now, I think all 9 of these guys are deserving for one reason or another, honestly. but the first 4 are easy for me. And then Billy Butler, like, he was the heart of this team while they were trying to get the young guys. And then he was the guy who stepped in and just did whatever the Royals asked of him.
Mm-hmm.
While Moustakas and Hosmer and everybody else was figuring things out in 2013 and 2014.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at. I know we're an old audio only platform, but I rolled my eyes pretty hard when Jeremy said that Carlos Beltran is Baseball Hall of Famer. I got flamed for my lengthy article over the weekend about that. If I'll link it in the podcast description.
Saying that Beltran was a Hall of Famer or that he was not?
Saying that he should not get into the Hall of Fame.
Okay. You're allowed to be wrong, I guess.
I laid out my reasoning. I did.
Okay.
So, but I have a tough time. Like, well, I don't want him in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but should he be in the Royals Hall of Fame? He didn't do any cheating or anything like that when he was with the Royals.
Oh my goodness.
People
are obsessed with your cheating. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. All right.
Don't. That's the lazy way out. It's the lazy way out, Jeremy.
He may have cheated one time.
He did.
May have cheated. Maybe the cheating didn't even help if you look at the home road splits.
Just because
so we'll never let him into the Hall of Fame because all of the stats he put up in all of the years before that are completely irrelevant.
Hey, one of the things that voters are supposed to take into account is their integrity and their sportsmanship.
Baloney.
All right.
There are plenty of much nastier fellas in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, there's nothing. I ain't arguing about taking people out of the Hall of Fame. I'm arguing about preventing people getting in the Hall of Fame. That's all. Yeah. Hey, agree to disagree on it.
No, I refuse. I disagree to disagree.
I'll just jump to my 5. Wade Davis, Alex Gordon, Joaquim Soria, Kelvin Herrera, and Yordano Ventura. I've spoken on this podcast several times about like how much I enjoyed Yordano Ventura. I guess so. I must. Gerard Dyson just had a great run with the Royals, but I mean, I can't pick him over Yordano Ventura or Joaquim Soria. I think Davis and Herrera and Gordon are locks.
Yeah. David, I'm not actually sure Herrera is, but Davis and Gordon are.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going to not vote for them just so I can get some other people some votes.
Maybe so. Get some support because after all, as long as they have 10% heading into the next year, they're going to pop up on the ballot again. So I
got to make sure Gerard Dyson is on next year's ballot if he doesn't get in this year.
You got to keep his hopes alive.
He deserves it, baby.
I really just think
that's what speed do, Jacob.
That's one of my favorite gifts during the Royal season. It's him
whenever I think of my happiest moment as a Royals baseball fan, whenever I think of being happy as a Royals baseball fan, I think naturally, like many people, of the 2014 wild card game.
Yeah.
I think of that game. And when I think of that game, I think of the moment that Gerard Dyson stole third base against Sean Doolittle in the 9th inning.
Chills.
That's what I think of when I think, what is the memory? I want to think about a memory of the Royals that makes me the happiest. Gerard Dyson stealing third base against Sean Doolittle in the 2014 wild card game. So he gets in based on the fact that he makes me happy.
Hey, and that's baseball should make you happy at the end of the day. I don't hate voting in that manner. So if you want to make your voice heard regarding who should get in with the class of 2025, go check out Royals.com. They posted it all over social media as well. The link is usually down in the comments on those posts. So go check it out. Go sign up and give the Royals your information in exchange for some Hall of Fame votes.
I have to put it that way, Jacob.
Because that's what it is.
I want votes. I don't want surveillance state.
It's too late, Jeremy.
I know. Believe me, I know.
Yeah. But there's a lot to talk about, but I don't even want to talk about it too much because there's a lot of winter meetings left ahead. The Brett Beatty stuff is starting to gather some smoke. Trading with the Mets overall, I think is more likely than
I
trading for
don't
Beatty specifically. Go ahead.
hate the idea of trading for Brett Beatty. He's young. He has a prospect pedigree. He's a third baseman. He could at least platoon with Michael Garcia. But if they bring him in to be the number 5 hitter, they're doing that thing that I was talking about earlier this offseason that I don't want them to do. I don't, like I said, don't get rid of Michael Garcia. Don't get rid of MJ Melendez, not yet. But you can't rely on them to break out either. And if you go after Brett Beatty, you're saying he's going to break out for us when he couldn't for the Mets for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And that I don't hate taking chances on guys. I think taking chances on guys makes a lot of sense a lot of the time. But you got to be smart when you do it. And this is a thing that I said last offseason when they were signing Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, is that I felt like the ceiling of the team hadn't necessarily been raised, though I was wrong about that. But the floor had definitely come up because you get a certain quality of start from a Seth Lugo or a Michael Wacha. Even at their worst, they bring a certain base level of competence that the Royals couldn't have counted on before they added them. And what I'm looking for here is you've got upside in the lineup in terms of MJ Melendez, in terms of Michael Garcia. Bring in some floor to guarantee. And that was the whole team, the whole offense last year. Guys would get hot, and then you had Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez, who were, at least Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino were pretty consistent. And you needed other guys were getting hot and cold. You need, and now you got India. He should bring some consistency with his OBP, but you still need a little bit more consistency. Just one more consistent bat in this lineup would go a long way to taking the pressure off of those high upside guys to see if they can get it figured out. And if they don't get it figured out, they're not killing you. If they do figure it out, suddenly you are just doing awesome.
Yeah, then you're rolling in surplus.
Right. And if you add a Brett Beatty, you're just adding another opportunity for surplus, but still leaving an option where you aren't good enough.
Yeah, precisely. I am curious what it would take to get Brett Beatty. Right now, he's that upside guy that doesn't have a spot on the 26-man roster, but he's too good for AAA. So I definitely think he's going to get moved. I just don't know if he comes to the Royals. I do have to flame. Go ahead.
No, the other thing is people are assuming he's going to be cheap. He's
might
a
not.
highly regarded prospect, still very young. I don't know that he's actually going to be cheap.
I don't think he will. I really don't. Because what? I mean, he only has two years in majors.
Yeah, and the Mets were like, well, we can try him. Mark Vientos is going to be our third baseman, but we can try him in the outfield. Got a designated hitter spot. They don't have a first baseman right now.
No.
Somebody can go play first.
Yeah, I think Mark Vientos would make sense over at first. Keep Brett Beatty at third, see what happens.
Sure, like they don't have to trade him.
No, they don't have to. They should only do so, as any smart team does, if it benefits them as well. And if it benefits the Mets, then usually that means the Royals are giving up something. So we'll see what happens there. I do have to flame one trade take regarding third base. And this is, I understand the offseason is a boring time. Okay. I gotta fill up content too. I absolutely get it. But Bleacher Report proposing the Royals trade for Alec Bohm made no sense.
Okay.
Made no sense. So if you're unaware, Alec Bohm, first All-Star season with the Philadelphia Phillies, a solid player, good, not great. Team's looking to move him. Let's see. You know what? We need to get over the hump. They've been continually finishing worst in the postseason. They got
the record. He would be the second best Royals hitter if the Royals.
He would.
He's good, but not great. Well, we're pretty good
in relation to the Phillies.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Bryce Harper is on your team. Trey Turner is on your team. Yeah, sure, he doesn't look good compared to them, but compared to the Royals, he looks pretty.
That he does, which is why the Royals make sense as a trade destination for him. But, I mean, Bleacher Report put out that the Royals sending MJ Melendez and Blake Mitchell to the Philadelphia Phillies would get Bohm. Number one, I don't think that gets Bohm. But number two, that just seems like a silly...
Sorry, Blake Mitchell and who again?
MJ Melendez.
Okay. I think that would get him. I think that's the value. I don't know if the Phillies do that because they're trying to improve their major league roster. Anyway, go on.
Well, I was going to say they reportedly asked the Mariners for one of their top 2 starting pitchers at the major league level. Like,
Which mostly tells me they don't want to trade him.
I mean, probably so. Actions do speak louder than words.
Then they signed an infielder, didn't they? Or they traded for one? Something that was like, Bohm is definitely gone now.
I am looking at the free agency signings. I'm seeing that they signed Romano, but that's it. I don't recall them trading for anyone.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
But I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Blake Mitchell was a first round pick last year, and he's done nothing, like, hasn't done anything wrong to show that the organization would want to move on from him. And I get it, they have this surplus of catching prospect talent, but it seems like he's the guy that you don't want to give up on. Just let's be sensible. This is why you follow the team specific guys. That's all I'm going to say.
So other team specific guys have said, and this kind of rings true to me a little bit, that Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell are roughly equivalent in value right now as trade pieces. Mitchell's probably a better prospect, but not a lot better, and he's further away. So they're pretty comparable. I had seen another deal that was Maikel Garcia and Carter Jensen for Bohm. I wouldn't do either of those deals, but I do think that you're talking kind of comparable value. I think like I know that we kind of approach things like Blake Mitchell is untouchable because we want to see him succeed as a Royal.
Yeah.
And I've written before that I don't think it makes sense for the Royals to trade Blake Mitchell because they took a big gamble in drafting him when they did. And for that gamble to pay off, he needs to succeed as a Royal. If he gets traded, then the gamble looks like it didn't really work. So I would be more, if they're equal in talent, personally, I would be more likely to trade Carter Jensen than Blake Mitchell. So you could do MJ Melendez and Carter Jensen for Alec Bowman. That actually might work because, as I said, Jensen is pretty close to the big leagues at this point, might make his debut this year. And I've heard the Phillies are also trying to maybe move on from JT Realmuto. So they might need a catcher.
They might.
So, maybe that makes sense. I don't think Blake Mitchell's untouchable. I think you can't afford to trade both Jensen and Mitchell. I think that would be a mistake. But if you see the right deal and they're like, yeah, we want Mitchell, not Jensen, then I think that's reasonable.
Okay. We'll have to keep tabs on it. I know the payroll projections are a little all over the place from industry sources, so the likelihood of the Royals completing another trade does feel a lot more likely, even if it is on like a John Schreiber level. They got to get creative when it comes to adding to this team.
They need something better than a John Schreiber level to this lineup.
Yes.
If they really want to add to the floor. That's my fear right now, based on the Rosenthal reporting, is that they're gonna, and that would be very Dayton Moore-esque in a way that I'm like, okay, JJ Piccolo's moving away from doing those kinds of things. But then I remember, well, there was Hunter Renfroe, so maybe he's not moving away from doing those kinds of things. I'm hoping he's moving away from doing those kinds of things, but we're going to have to wait and see, I guess.
That we will. Before we get on to our Royals reviews, the Rule 5 draft is going to happen before we speak next. I don't know what the Royals are going to do in the Rule 5 draft. They do have open 40-man spots, so maybe that's a route they take. That would be a pretty frugal approach. I just want to toss out some names that I've done some deep digging on and that I'd like as picks. Brian Magdaleno in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft. He's a pretty good reliever in the Texas Rangers organization. I've talked myself into Trey McLaughlin being a right-handed reliever that could make the jump to the 26-man roster. He just has a lot of deception on his fastball, nearly a 43% whiff rate at the AAA level on that pitch alone. And he's a fastball slider guy. and he has an elite extension metric, like it would rank in the 100th percentile in the majors.
Percentile, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. So right now he currently sits as the Mets 24th best prospect according to Fangraphs. So that's pretty good value, I would say, for a reliever. And lastly, Ryan Watson is a guy in the Giants organization right now who I admitted it was kind of a homer pick. I've seen him play for the Tides a few times, and he had a different body language about him this season. So I was like, and he started performing better. So I like that.
I mean, that's what the scouts do sometimes.
Yeah. And on the hitting side of things for the minor league portion, I have a couple of power prospects, Jose De La Cruz and Yerlin Confidon, both of them ranking in the top 5 for exit velos in the available Rule 5 draft guys. If the Royals wanted to add an outfielder here, like I don't think that really addresses too much on the roster. They need a higher level. But Luke Ritter in the New York Mets organization, he's a guy who is definitely currently blocked, and he's been performing at AAA. He's been looking nice. Andrew Navigado is a righty who plays everywhere. I think last year he played everywhere except for pitcher, catcher, and first base. He can cover all the spots, and he had a 21 homer, 22 stolen base season. Like that's at any level of 2020 season is pretty solid. And then lastly, Jefferson Morales is unfortunately he has a lot of stuff that kind of mirrors MJ Melendez. So I don't think Royals fans would like that, but there is definitely potential there if the Royals wanted to look that way. So those are the guys I'm looking at. We know the Royals took Matt Sauer last year. We know how that turned out. Just truthfully,
Awesome.
That turned out great. But the Royals didn't miss out on the playoffs by taking a flyer on Matt Sauer. They admitted when the experiment was over, and they kept it moving. So I would like him to at least try in the Rule 5 draft. That's just me.
I feel like the Rule 5 draft is really underutilized. Like, yes, it's really a lottery thing.
Yeah.
You're very unlikely to win. If you do, you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Because it's only $50,000, which is a lot of money for you and me, but is nothing for an MLB team.
Right.
So and you get $25,000 back if you have to give the player back. So like if it doesn't work out, you've lost $25,000.
Yep.
Boo hoo.
And I mean, the Royals have a fairly good hit record on the Rule 5 draft. Guys like Brad Keller, Joaquin Soria. I mean, I know Keller wasn't locked down, but man, he was a bright spot.
He was good for a few years.
Yeah, he really, really was. Billy Brewer is another guy that comes to mind. There is value. I'm not saying it's common, but there is value there if you approach it right. So we'll see what the Royals do. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next podcast. Jeremy, let's go ahead and get on to today's Royals reviews. How's that sound?
Sure.
All right. I will go ahead and start us off. Let's see, because I'm sure you have to think of what to review after all this time that you don't have to intake entertainment.
What? I didn't understand that.
I didn't understand it either. I'm getting tired. All right. So I had a little bit of a road trip last week, and so I was able to finish off a book that I was working on called The Extra 2%, How Wall Street Strategies Took a Major League Baseball Team from Worst to First. And what it does is it talks about the 2008 Tampa Bay Rays. I know that was a great team, and we all know the Rays now as a very numbers forward, frugal team. They haven't changed that mold at all. But I enjoyed this because it told me more about the circumstances, about the Rays getting to Tampa Bay, staying in Tampa Bay, and just that overall very dysfunctional franchise for the early years of its existence. And I love the blending of business and analytics in baseball. I really do. We don't hear about it a whole lot, but this just really exemplified finding value in the margins, and that 2% does matter in baseball. We saw it this year with the Royals. So I highly suggest going and reading it as an off-season read. It's The Extra 2% by Jonah Carey, and Mark Cuban does the forward, if that matters for you.
Oh boy.
I know, right? Jeremy, on to you.
I'm going to give you 2 for the price of 1.
Ooh.
So just real quick, Fangraphs has a feature this year. It's the time of year for those Spotify Wraps and all of the lookalikes, and Fangraphs has their own this year. The Fangraphs Walk Off, which is pretty fun if you like that sort of thing, which I do. And I don't use Spotify, so I'm like, somebody give me something to work with here. And there you go. So check that out if you're a Fangraphs member, which you can be a free member. That's okay.
Yes.
Do it. And even as a free member, you get access to some features that you don't if you don't have an account. You should do it. And so my other review is going to be, finally, weeks after I finished playing it, Dragon Age Veilguard, which is a game that I really enjoyed. I wasn't actually planning to buy it. I did not care for Inquisition. I felt like it went too far with the open world bloat. Which is like, yeah, sure, you got lots of icons on the map to do things, but none of them are interesting. And the open world, like, choose your own adventure nature of it makes the story weak because the plot points can't rely on other plot points having happened. So it gets a little bit frustrating for me. I'm not, back in the day, I was big into Mass Effect and like, every choice you make matters. And as I've gotten older, I realized just how damaging that is to the narrative when the narrative can't be sure exactly what happened. And so a lot of specifics are lost in the name of generalities to account for the fact that we don't know exactly how you cleared up the rebellion on SETI Alpha 5. But one of my friends was like, you gotta play it. And I was like, and I was reading about how it's very similar to Mass Effect 2, so I decided to give it a try. It turned out to be a great pick for me. I was having a little bit of struggles with depression right after it came out, which was the first or second week in November. If that gives you any idea of things that were happening around then, might give the person some depression. And so I was like, one of the things I love about it, the best part about it, is that it's a game about good people. Like, it's not about, but it's a game that features good people being good to each other. A lot of party-based games are like, oh, this person's an asshole, but they'll learn to be nice eventually. Everybody you meet is like a good person, and they treat each other well, and they treat you well. And it's nice. It's nice to be like, oh, yeah, this is what it's like when people aren't jerks to each other for no reason. And it was just a really pleasant, enjoyable experience. It's not a perfect, again, there's weaknesses to the story because your choices have to matter. So we have to give you some choices that matter. But also the choices don't matter as much as they have in previous Dragon Age games. So it's really like, you maybe you're not all in on it, so it's not working as well as you want, but also you're still losing things. But it was worth it for the characters and to spend time with all of them. I will warn you that it does get really, really rough and sad towards the end of the game. There's some difficult stuff that happens, but overall, very enjoyable experience, and I'm glad I got a chance to play it. Not a perfect game, but a fun game.
Well, good. And not every game needs to be perfect. Sometimes it's just good to have fun.
Most games don't need to be perfect because
Right.
almost none of them are. You can't all be Marvel's Midnight. No, I'm kidding. Marvel's Midnight Suns is great, not perfect. You can't all be Trails in the Sky.
Yes, it makes us appreciate those games even more. All right, well, hey, speaking of games, we're going to stop playing games here and get on out of here with the Royals Rundown podcast. Thank you all for listening to us. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you're listening to us. We are going to keep the Royals content coming throughout the winter, so make sure you never miss an episode. I am Jacob Milham. They're Jeremy Greco. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, go Royals!